What we cannot see with the naked eye has always driven us forward in our quest for understanding. The limits to our vision have limited us for centuries until we began to question, just because we cannot see it, does that truly mean it isn't there? That inquiry changed the way we viewed the world and beyond. Telescopes picked up faraway galaxies and opened our minds to more questions, including opening the door to conversation about intergalactic intelligent life. Microscopes honed in on minuscule organisms, answering long-pondered questions about disease, which puzzled us for most of human history. Spectrum analyzers helped us see radio waves so we could better understand the function of our hearts. We take this knowledge and these devices for granted now, but before their invention, anyone who posed theories about what they ultimately revealed were largely dismissed, and sometimes ridiculed. One of history's best exemplifications of this is Ignaz Semmelweis, the Hungarian physician who noticed women in the maternity ward were dying at an alarming rate after being treated by doctors who performed autopsies. His hypothesis of death particles that were somehow being transferred from cadavers to new mothers during delivery was literally laughed at. Today, we remember him as the father of hygiene, and washing our hands is second nature. But at a time where so much of what we consider to be valid rode on what we could literally see right in front of us, Semmelweis only earned widespread acceptance years after his death. His story has become a lesson to us all, to stop and consider just because we cannot see something, and science hasn't yet proven its existence, or rather, we do not yet have the scientific tools to understand its existence, doesn't necessarily mean something isn't there. Welcome to National Park After Dark.
This feels like a hospital episode.
Does it feel like a spooky hospital episode? Because that was the vibe I was going for.
Well, it's pretty scary to think of that a woman giving birth is being treated by a doctor who performed an autopsy before that and didn't wash their hands. So that's definitely scary.
That is frightening, yeah. But that's the only time we're going to talk about that. So we'll just leave that there. But yeah, when I was researching Semmelweis and his story briefly, clearly just for the introduction, but there was a quote that one of the other physicians said when they were speaking about his theory and considering his theory of the transfer of germs and things like that, they basically were saying, how could gentlemen have germs? Like, gentlemen couldn't possibly.
Like a man of stature couldn't have a germ.
A doctor? Me?
A doctor?
No. Yeah.
With germs? Who doesn't wash their hands?
We've come a long way.
Yeah. The invention of soap changed a lot of things.
The use of soap, using it, you know,
it's
appropriately.
Crazy. It's crazy to think that there was a time that, and of course now we know, so that's why it's crazy, but it's crazy to think that there was a time where your doctors weren't washing their hands, or you weren't washing your hands ever. Like, you're eating food, you're putting your hands, like, you touch your face so many times a day, and just like eating food and touching other things and never washing your hands ever.
I heard a statistic once, and I don't know where, it was probably on the internet without any sort of credible backing. So I'm not exactly sure this statistic, but it's always kind of stuck with me that you touch your face 3,000 times a day.
That can't be true.
I don't know.
3,000 times
I don't know, just
a
like
day?
a little, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I just did 5. So quick.
That's true. But like
brushing your hair from your face, or I don't know. Or just like sometimes when I'm like thinking, I'll like kind of just like hold my chin a little bit, not like pondering, like hold my actual chin, but I'll just rub my jaw or something. I don't know. But I try not to, because of the leaps and bounds that we've both taken with investing in skincare.
Yeah, I'm trying to do the math on that. So let me see. So if we're touching our face 3,000 times a day, that's 20. That's 24 hours.
Do 12 hours because we're asleep let's say we're asleep for 12 on a good day.
So in 12 hours, we touch our face 3,000 times.
Again, I'm
just
saying this is probably wrong.
Okay. So there's 12 hours. We're doing 12 hours.
Yeah.
12 hours. I guess it would be...
Do 3,000 divided by 12.
That's good. I was trying to put it into minutes.
Okay.
So that means that we would touch our
3,000?
face 250 times
an hour. Okay, so we're wrong. I'm wrong. Or that person was wrong. But it's a lot. Maybe Google it. See that what would be the actual number is.
4 times a minute.
How often does...
I mean, maybe that's true. That doesn't feel totally impossible. 4 times a minute.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. No, this is wrong. The first thing that comes up is like a article mostly focusing on COVID, but it says that research shows that we touch our faces 23 times an hour. So it's way less than 3,000, but that's still a lot.
That is.
Okay, that literally has nothing to do with this episode. And I'm so sorry for getting us off the rails right away. If anybody is listening to this for the very first time, hi, I'm Danielle, and that's Cassie, and we talk about death and awful events in national parks.
And facts that aren't true sometimes, and we debunk them while we're on the podcast.
Yeah. Okay, so...
Well, also, if you're listening right now and you have never watched our YouTube, we're also on YouTube, and you can actually see us talking too.
Yeah, you can, which is weird for me still. And it looks like Cassie just got back from or is in Aruba. You're tan, you're in a tank top. You look like you're living a different life than me. I'm pale and I have like 5 layers on. What's happening? Is it warm?
It's warm today. Yeah, is it not warm at you? Where you are? You?
At me? No, not
it's
really.
It's 65 degrees and sunny here already, and we're recording this in the morning.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not that warm here yet. And the office, just because it's above the garage, it heats up really slowly. So it's always kind of chilly here. But anyway, okay, enough talking, except for the fact that I have to tell everyone.
Enough talking on this podcast.
I'm not going to say another word.
Just listen for the next hour in silence.
Yeah, it's a meditation podcast. Last weekend, so we're recording a week in advance. So as of I guess 2 weeks ago now, when everyone's listening, I went to the Titanic exhibit
finally
over the weekend, and it was really fun. And if anyone is in Boston or in the Boston area, the exhibit's going to be there for a few months. I went on opening day because I'm like, I gotta be there. So I went on opening day, and it was really cool. It was small compared to some of the other exhibits I've seen, but it is a traveling exhibit, but it's really cool. And they have a lot of recreations of different parts of the ship, the first through third classes and the big infamous staircase. And it was really, really cool. So if anyone's looking for something to do in the New England area that likes the Titanic, you should go, because it was really cool. What have you been up to?
Not too much. It was my dad's birthday this past weekend. So I was in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, hanging out for a few days. And now I'm back and just doing, so fun fact, it's October here, but I live at 2,000 feet elevation. So it has started snowing here, and it is time to winterize everything. So that's my plan today, as I still have a lot of garden stuff out that I need to take in the hoses, bring in, just kind of winterize things to prepare for the snow that's here. It has since melted at my elevation, but we got over a foot higher than me. So winter is coming. Rule of thumb, we always joke is November 1st. Yeah, winter's coming, Game of Thrones. And we always joke here that November 1st is the first day winter up here, and it snows every day until spring. So November 1st is right around the corner, so I got to get ready.
Yep, got to prepare.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going somewhere for this episode that doesn't get snow. We're going abroad. We haven't done a story outside of the United States in quite a while, I feel like. So we are actually heading to Australia for today's story.
Cool. It's on my list. Definitely. I've never been to Australia.
I know when we were in Borneo, Cassie was like, I'm just going to go to Australia. It's right there. It's literally right there. And I'm like, yeah, looking at the map on Google Maps.
Like, that's such a good idea.
Yeah, you should totally just pop on over. Yeah, after like another 14-hour flight somehow. So she scrapped that pretty quickly. But
yeah, it's like, it was actually 17 hours. I was like,
yikes.
Yeah. Like,
I guess it all does depend also on where you were going in Australia from Borneo.
I was trying to go to Sydney. And it was just like, it's totally across. I thought it was going to be, I was naive. I thought it would be like a 5-hour flight, and it was not. So
yeah, some of us think we touch their face 3,000 times a day, and other people think that Australia is 5 hours from Borneo. And that's just how it is. But we are going to Sydney for today's story. So
cool.
You can have fun that way.
Spark something uncommon this holiday season with incredible hand-picked gifts from Uncommon Goods. They make holiday shopping fun and stress-free by scouring the globe for you to find handmade, original, remarkable things for everyone on your list. They have the type of gifts you'll look at and go, oh, this is perfect for my loved one. What I love about Uncommon Goods is that their website is so fun to look through. They have things on there that I never would have thought about getting for my loved ones, but as soon as I see it, my reaction is always like, wow, this would be perfect. It's unique, it's fun, and it's something that would mean a lot to them. When you shop at Uncommon Goods, you're supporting artists and small independent businesses, which we love. Many of their handcrafted products are made in small batches, so shop now before they sell out this holiday season. Uncommon Goods looks for products that are high quality, unique, and often handmade or made in the US. They have the coolest finds for kids, to book lovers, to die-hard sport fans, and everyone in between. Uncommon Goods has a unique selection to choose from that you won't just find anywhere else. And with every purchase you make at Uncommon Goods, they give back $1 to a nonprofit partner of your choice. They've donated more than $3 million to date. To get 15% off your next gift, go to uncommongoods.com/NPAD. That's uncommongoods.com/NPAD for 15% off. Don't miss out on this limited time offer. Uncommon Goods, we're all out of the ordinary.
So we're going to Australia's Sydney Harbour National Park in Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. And this park is actually pretty small, coming in at under 1,000 acres, but it consists of 5 small harbour islands, rugged sandstone cliffs, sheltered beaches, bushlands, and hiking trails that all hold a lot of history, lengthy Aboriginal history, colonial, and military histories. North Head, the scenic area the park is located on, has a long and rich Aboriginal history prior to colonization, as does pretty much every park we've ever spoken about and ever will. North Head, also known as Karangal, was home to several Aboriginal groups, including the Gaimai and Karaji, who utilized the area as an important ceremonial site and as a place of significant teaching, and remains a place of significance today. The British colonists also had their first and earliest recorded contact with the Aboriginal peoples here at this location on North Head in January of 1788. Today, visitors to this spot will be in the park, and in the winter months, they have a perfect whale watching opportunities while atop the harbor's beautiful coastline that overlooks one of the world's most famous harbors, and can choose from different islands within the park to hike, picnic, swim, and snorkel, or just join guided historic tours. With its picturesque lookouts, grassy knolls, and bushlands teeming with wildlife, this national park is a top destination for romantic getaways, weddings, and special events. One of the locations known for its luxurious accommodations within the national park is named the Q Station. The space advertises these rooms and suites and cottages and lounges. They say, come and stay here. They advertise the beautiful French doors that lead out onto these balconies that overlook the bay and the water. There's large, comfy beds to tangle up in. There's private bathrooms with soaking tubs and these big suites with adjoining kind of like parlor rooms, all just advertised as this beautiful, romantic escape or an escape to go to with your family for some bonding time. Just the ultimate relaxation.
I mean, I'm convinced their marketing has worked for me.
Yeah, you should see the pictures too. But these rooms, suites, and cottages are buildings that once served a completely different purpose. They functioned as barracks, hospitals, and segregating housing complexes for over 13,000 people for over 100 years. Thousands of people poured in here from ships entering Sydney Harbour, arriving from all over the world. But the people weren't here by choice. The Q station, as we know it today, was originally the North Head quarantine station, where 572 people died from diseases such as smallpox, the Spanish influenza, the bubonic plague, scarlet fever, and more, and today are buried on site and may just pay you a visit while you're visiting the park.
Oh no. Less convinced.
Well, I'm more convinced. I don't know how that happened.
I know you are.
So let's get familiar with the quarantine station and what it was like for the people who spent time here. By 1832, Sydney was pretty terrified about the possibility of the spread of deadly infectious diseases coming in aboard the various passenger and cargo ships that were entering the harbor and their country from various parts of the world. After a disastrous voyage and subsequent quarantine of the Lady Megaten, in which 73 passengers and crew died, the governor formally requested funds for the establishment of a permanent quarantine station at this site at North Head. In response, Parliament sanctioned an isolated area on the edge of Sydney Harbour, about 10 kilometres from the community itself, that would serve as the country's first permanent quarantine station that would forcibly quarantine ships which arrived from infected ports upon their arrival to the country. The quarantine station was opened in 1833, and the first step upon arrival was disinfection. And from that time, when it first opened, up until the early 1900s, this process was extremely basic and less effective than desired. And we're pretty much talking, the ships would come in, there would be tents that were set up above the cliffs, on the cliffs above the beach, and people would just kind of be put there and sequestered there until they either died or showed signs of recovering from whatever ailment they had.
So were there any So what was the disinfecting?
The disinfecting portion would come a little bit later, but at this point in time, from the 1830s when it first opened to the early 1900s, the understanding of diseases was pretty limited. There were pretty much mysteries, how they were transmitted, how to treat them, etc. They were all kind of big unknowns. So the establishment of an efficient and effective process was trial and error for the most part for the very beginning, the first couple decades of the quarantine station. So they pretty much just set up some tents and they were like, let's burn your clothes and you just need to stay over here until the disease is not noticed anymore or you pass away. And in 1911, so in 1911, the director of the station was sent on a 5-month trip around the world with a mission to visit other quarantine sites and note their best practices. So basically, he was studying how other quarantine stations operated, and it became apparent that Australia had been struggling with properly dealing with various endemic diseases coming their way, smallpox at this point in time in particular. So he set out to learn and bring back all of his observations and what was working best for other places and put it into practice at the quarantine station at North Head.
Maybe I'll get into this, but do you know how he was protecting himself from these diseases while he was hopping around to all these quarantine stations?
I don't get into it and I don't know, but he was fine.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, and I have to imagine he wasn't going to travel comes with risk of picking up bugs and things like that, especially if you're going for that sole purpose to places, infected areas that there is the presence of various diseases. But he wasn't throwing himself into the general population. He was going to speak to the operators of the quarantine stations, and he wasn't going into the population.
He wasn't talking to the patients or anything.
Right.
Okay.
Because the patients don't know anything about how it's operated. They're talking
just there.
Yeah, to the superintendents and things like that.
Okay. That makes more sense.
So he brings back a bunch of information and all of these best practices and implements them. And it changes the way that North Head was operated completely. So once a ship would pull into the bay at Sydney Harbour Q Station, a doctor from the Q Station would row out to the ship and check in with the captain, just to get an idea of how many people were ill, how many people were being treated, and for what diseases. The sick would then be taken first off the ship and sent directly to the hospital, while healthy or asymptomatic people would be instructed to take one change of clothing with them and would be brought to shore to the wharf where the disinfection process began in the bathing blocks, which were buildings that contained about 24 showers each, and there were 3 of them. And these are not, they look like buildings of sheet metal that were constructed and divided into little cubicles, like kind of like step 1, step 2, step 3 type of thing for each shower. A foreman and a superintendent would be yelling instructions. The idea was to get passengers moving as quickly as possible to limit the chance of the spread of disease. So it wasn't like okay, well, you're going to take a nice shower now. You can place your belongings over there and like take your time. No, it was like, let's get a move on here. Their change of clothing would then be taken and sent directly to large autoclaves for sterilization, while their personal possessions were taken and sent to what was called the baker's oven, where it was placed on this kind of like track, which would be sent through a decontamination process that was designed to kill any insects or vermin that were creep crawling around.
In their clothes?
And in their luggage, yeah. This is the late 1800s, early 1900s.
Yeah.
So yes.
Just picturing like in your clothes, you have a mouse in your pocket. Like, what are you doing?
It's not on purpose. But yeah, so that was for their personal belongings. And meanwhile, people are walking to the showers with just one change of clothing. When they arrived at the bathing stations, the passengers would be sent into a waiting room until the next shower bay was available to wait their turn. They'd be lined up, instructed to take a step into the cubicle in the shower to disrobe, and their clothes would be placed into a wire basket and taken away for sterilization while they moved into the shower portion. The showers ran with hot water, which was actually a first-time experience for a lot of these people who came from places, countries, or an area that does not have A, running water, or B, hot water. So this is like a first time experience for a lot of people. But
like, ooh, what's this? I like it here.
Well, no, because this isn't just hot water. It's cutting edge technology for a lot of these people, but it's not like a spa experience because yes, there's hot water, but it is mixed with carbolic acid, which, do you know what carbolic acid is?
No, but acid and water don't sound good.
Yeah. So this poisonous chemical is a substance that's used to make plastics, epoxy, and used to kill germs. And this addition, sometimes, depending on the quantity of how much was put into the water tanks, would sometimes take off a layer of people's skin while they were.
I mean, it's like a full body chemical peel.
You can think of it that way if it makes you feel better. Head to
like
toe
they come
treatment.
out younger. Yeah.
It's like, you know how much we pay for that for just our face?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you got a whole body treatment? Amazing.
That's not going to age well. But okay. So after you're done with this, also there's the addition of the foreman and the superintendents would also be watching you through a peephole that was drilled into the side of the shower wall to make sure that people were actually getting under the water and fully soaking themselves. So you have...
I mean, I know I joke that it's a chemical peel, but I mean, this sounds horrific and horrible.
And people are watching you. Strange men are watching you from a little peephole in the side of the wall.
Yeah. I imagine most of these people coming in are men.
Well,
right?
No, because a lot of these people are immigrants coming to find a new life. Like there are tons of families, women, children.
This was like cargo ship kind of things, like people bringing in goods from other countries.
There's both. There's both.
Okay.
And there's also a lot of military coming in because of World War I and World War II that happened in the time frame that this Q station is is running and functioning. It ran for over 150 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
Wow.
there's people from all ages coming here, a lot of families. After you're done with your shower, you'd be given your change of clothing, which had been sterilized while you were going through the showering process, or those of others. Like, they're not always keeping track of, oh, this is your clothes. Sometimes people got other people's clothing, and then you were sent to your accommodations. The showers were divided by class, 1st through 3rd, and the experiences from then on forward for those who were required to be at North Head Station varied wildly based on a few things in addition to their class. The circumstances in which they arrived, if their ship was infected with any sort of disease, and if so, which one, as well as their race and their gender. Prior to the 1850s, accommodations were barrack style, very basic for all classes, everyone coming in, and the entire station was pretty rudimentary for everybody. However, by the 1870s, passengers began demanding that their accommodations at the quarantine station reflected their ticket status and their standard of travel. So I imagine that this is the first class started demanding this, because I don't foresee anyone in the 3rd class demanding that type of...
They be treated as 3rd class.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So in response to that, the Q station built new facilities for the 1st and 2nd class, while the barracks became the 3rd class accommodations. The entire property's holding capacity was about 1,200, although 2,500 people were housed here during the peak of one of the deadliest pandemics in world history, which was the Spanish flu. In response to this influx, patients were put out in tents outside, on the porches, just kind of scattered everywhere. Clearly, they're over 1,000 over capacity, holding capacity, so they had to make up for it somehow. For those in 1st class who were lucky enough to not be sick, their time at the Q station was kind of like an extended holiday. They had access to tennis courts, swimming pools, and even concerts and dances. And their dining hall and their living quarters were small in comparison to the 2nd and 3rd class accommodations, because there were proportionally less 1st class ticket holders usually traveling at this time. But they were all very well adorned and decorated. Their dining hall had a big, nice fireplace. Everyone got dressed up for dinner time and would dine together every night. Their meals were prepared by chefs, and they were waited on by stewards. It was like a pretty fancy experience for being in quarantine.
no wonder why they argued for that. I mean, versus barracks versus that.
Yeah, it's an upgrade for sure.
Yeah, they won on that fight for sure.
A news article from a local paper published in 1913 describes it in part saying, quote, "Those who are merely detained as contacts have about 500 acres of grounds to ramble over. In good weather, the days pass like a picnic. There are paths and retreats and open, well-grassed plots. Cricket has been played, fishing is open to all, and those who like swimming have it in abundance." So, I mean, that feels like a vacation to me.
For sure. At the end of a long day, I like to wind down and relax, and a glass of wine is great, don't get me wrong, but I don't love having alcohol often. Lately, I've been loving Sol's new out-of-office THC gummies. They make me feel the perfect amount of relaxed and calm that also doesn't stop me from wanting to do the things I love after I'm done with work. Also, fun fact, hemp-derived THC products like Sol's gummies are legally sold in every state throughout the US. Sol's new out-of-office gummies are perfectly microdosed with hemp-derived THC and CBD to give any day that chilling on the beach vibe. I had a Sol out-of-office THC gummy yesterday before I went for a long walk with the dogs, and it was just the most peaceful afternoon ever. Because of the 2018 Farm Bill, hemp-derived THC is now legal and accessible nationwide. So if you didn't know about this, surprise, it's your lucky day. Out-of-office gummies give you the perfect microdose feeling that you're looking for, where you feel just right, calm, peaceful, ready to watch a movie, read a book, or go out for a hike. For me, it's especially helpful after a stressful day where I truly just want to relax and enjoy what I'm doing in my free time. And that's not all Sol's got. Whether you're looking for a sleep aid, enhanced focus, or pain relief, Sol has all your wellness needs covered. And Sol's products are grown right here in the USA, organically farmed and gluten-free. This holiday season, give the gift of Sol. Head to getsoul.com and use code NPAD for 30% off your order. That's 30% off your order using code NPAD. One last time, getsoul.com and code NPAD for 30% off.
Second class had a similar yet less luxurious experience. However, most people arrived in the third class and they had a vastly different experience. Many of those passengers were soldiers returning from war. And keep in mind that these men are already going through it. I mean, they're coming back from war. And some of them are ill with disease, which is primarily the reason that they're there. Others are seriously wounded, while some, in a best case scenario, are just exhausted. They're tired and they want to just go home. But others are suffering from PTSD, all making for a third class experience that was less than ideal. For example, in February of 1919, the ship the Aragon arrived at the station. And this is a ship full of soldiers coming back from the First World War. They had already been delayed several times on their way back for various different reasons. And when they arrived at the Q station, things got worse. They were kept in limbo, first of all, on the ship for 4 days, literally just hanging in the port because they weren't allowed on land yet, because there was a big debate for some reason regarding the ship, regarding who was responsible for them, whether it was the military or the Q station. And I'm not sure why that is, because so many different military ships and soldiers came to the Q station over its history. And I'm not sure why this particular ship had this problem. But either way, it was pissing off the soldiers. They were just sitting on the ship for over 4 days. And as the debate wore on, the troops were getting fed up, and several of the men attempted to pull up anchor and steer the ship towards the main port in Sydney, but they were ultimately stopped. In a second attempt to escape their confines on the ship, 42 men commandeered 3 different lifeboats and were able to escape. They were eventually all rounded up by police, but 2 men actually made it as far away as Newcastle, which is about 100 miles away. So they were on it. When a decision was ultimately made and the men were finally allowed to the Q station, they were required to carry their own packs and kits a mile uphill to their quarters, which turned out to be a patch of grass. So they had to dig their own trenches and pitch their own tents that would serve as their accommodation. And there was also the matter of the brown snakes that were prevalent on the grounds of the Q station.
Oh yeah, we're in Australia.
Yep. And on their first night, they documented that they killed over 60 of these snakes that were slithering in and out of their tents and all around the area that they were to stay. So it's just, I say that as an example of the difference in, because the soldiers were not treated as first class. They're coming back. Which is
crazy. Like, thank you for serving our country, but here's like the shit end of the stick.
Right. And as I mentioned, usually the worst of the worst patients and passengers and crew members that were coming in would be taken directly to the hospital. But I mean, there are other people here that are probably not feeling their greatest. They're going through it. And they're like, all right, take all your crap and hike up a mile uphill, and you're already tired and exhausted, and you can like figure it out. And we'll get to you eventually.
Yeah. And imagine like if this is where you live, you're coming home from war and you want to see your wife, your children, your family members, and now you're stuck in this place that is treating you horribly. You don't know when you're going to get to leave. You're doing kind of hard labor just to live there.
Yeah.
And now you're only a couple miles from where your family lives, but you're stuck in this spot.
Yeah. And not being treated fairly.
Yeah. While other people can just buy a place to sit in front of a fireplace and go swimming and play tennis.
And be served. And
be served, a chef, and you just fought for your country. And this is how you're being treated. It's wild.
Well, it does get worse as far as how people were treated, because remember the station.
I figured.
Yeah, because remember I said the station didn't just segregate people by class. They also segregated people by race. And at this time in Australian history, people of Chinese descent had it really terribly. So in regards to the Q station specifically, upon arrival, people of Chinese descent were not permitted ashore until they quarantined first on their boats for 21 days, which was not a thing for nearly everybody else. Then
21 days is so long.
Yep. Then once that time period was up, they would have to give over all of their belongings and clothing, which was standard for everybody else, to go through the baker's oven and the autoclaves and things like that. But actually they would just burn everything. They
wouldn't get any of their belongings back?
Nope. Everything would be burned. And it wasn't until 1904 until they were actually given actual structural accommodations, because before they were just in tents or just rudimentary things that were thrown up on the lawn. And even these structural accommodations were not great. They basically looked like a 3-sided sheet metal lean-to, kind of like a barn. It looked like a barn to me when I was looking at some of the videos and tours that they have up on YouTube of this area.
So I'm not very familiar with Australia and China's history, but do you know why Chinese people were treated worse?
Yes. So at the time, especially during the 1880s, there was a outbreak of smallpox, and it was wrongly believed that Chinese arrivals were to blame for the introduction and spread of smallpox. So they were treated unjustly.
This is feeling very reminiscent of what's happening in today's world. Just want to say, this is...
I know.
History repeats itself, and here we are.
And it's interesting you say that, because for my research process for this episode in particular, I watched a series that the Q station actually created and put up on their YouTube channel. There was 5 or 6, maybe up to 8 short, 15-minute clips of the tour guides at the park, bringing you around to each place of the Q station and going over the different histories associated with each location and the process and what it was like for people who came here. And they filmed it during COVID. And they talked a lot about the parallels of, what the world was going through in 2020 versus when the Q station was in operation. So they do draw a lot of parallels to that. So back to the awful and unjust accommodations and treatments for the Chinese who arrived here. Not only did they have these awful accommodations, each of those accommodations was divided into kind of 3 sections, and each section had bunk beds instead of these big en-suites and things like that. There were bunk beds that
were
just
stacked on top of each other.
Yeah, so they were 3-tiered bunk beds, and each of them were supposed to hold 60 people in each of these little rooms. And the sick were not separated from the well. So they're all just in a room together. They're all just in this crammed room together. They're left to their own devices to care for themselves. They're not going to the hospital on site. They were given very little supplies, and they even had to cook for themselves and were given no access to running water.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
That's just brewing so many things here. You're going to have people who, if there's no water, you can't clean yourselves. You're around sick people. You're going to get it. It's going to spread. You have to cook your own food, but I'm assuming the food that they're giving isn't great. And imagine you're cooking,
imagine you're asymptomatic, but you're a carrier for a disease and you're cooking food for others.
Yeah.
There's so much wrong with this, clearly, but those practices did eventually change. However, I would be remiss to not mention them because it's awful. And it's part of how this station operated for a period of time. Extensive records were kept, which is how we know most of how the station was operated throughout time. However, many of the experiences of the passengers are recorded in the land itself. The station has over 1,600 inscriptions that were made by passengers and crew that are carved around North Head. So there's all of these, a lot of them are just the ship name they came on and the date and maybe somebody's initials or the names, but some are larger and they express their fears, their experiences, or simply, like I said, just a short, I was here on this date.
Mm-hmm.
There are poems and initials and details carved in several different languages and throughout different periods of history. And it's important to say that the station was not constantly occupied because there wasn't always a quarantine necessary. It was only when there was illness or disease noted on a ship coming in. Like every ship would come in and kind of go like, okay, is there anybody sick or ill on the ship? If so, you're going to the quarantine station. If not, you're going just straight to the main port in Sydney. So it wasn't every single ship coming in.
Maybe you said this already, but how long are healthy people supposed to stay here for? That are actually have gotten into the quarantine, not like the 21-day stuff and people out to sea, but who are actually there.
So I read that the average stay here was between 3 and 40 days.
That's a huge range. 3 or 40 days.
Yeah. I think it depends on, like I said, a bunch of different factors and what was going on the ship that you arrived on. Like imagine you're not sick, but 50 people died of something on the same vessel that you came in on. You know, it's all dependent. So while it wasn't always in operation, there were times in history that it was full and, like I said earlier, completely overrun, in particular during the Spanish influenza epidemic. Worldwide, it killed an estimated 50 million people. And when it first hit in 1918, it was a complete mystery and no treatment existed. During this time at the quarantine station, an additional step was added to help combat the Spanish flu. Passengers and crew from incoming ships were taken from the vessels and dragged into inhalation chambers with 50 to 60 other people. The doors were bolted from the outside and a small trapdoor on the ceiling would be opened. From there, a gas canister would be thrown into the chamber that would fill the room. And this treatment, quote unquote, would last for 4 minutes, which they had to endure twice a day for 3-day-long periods. And they did this because they thought that this practice would purify people's lungs. But in reality, the treatment actually made the disease worse if someone did in fact have it, or if someone did not have it, it would make them more susceptible and more likely to contract Spanish influenza by doing this.
Yeah, it sounds horrible. You just trap people into like a gas chamber, essentially.
It does look like a gas chamber. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it is. But yeah, that's the right picture to have in mind. So during this time, the Spanish influenza, the hospital is completely inundated with people. Every single bed was filled of the sick and dying, and they were spilled out onto the porches, in tents, things like that. And if you were infected, you'd typically be given a simple hospital bed in a room with dozens of other people, just separated by a sheet, if anything. And if you were lucky, you had a mosquito net that you could throw over yourself. The bed would be equipped with straps as well, because during the end stages of the Spanish flu, your lungs fill with fluid and patients become really irritable and delusional, and they start flailing. They're drowning in their own fluids. And in response to that, the nurses would give them syringes full of strychnine as a treatment. What is strychnine? Strychnine is a poison. Strychnine is something that people put out as a poison to kill coyotes and wolves. And it causes convulsions and can lead and often leads to death. So this
is that what they were intending, is to kill them once they got to a certain point?
No, this was just kind of like whatever acid I was talking about earlier. I already brain dumped the name. It was thought that and the same thing with the gas chambers. It's like these are all being used as treatments because
they're killing people.
People are so unfamiliar with the disease and how to accurately treat people with these various diseases. It's just like a big time of trial and error. And even though they thought it was helping or minimizing different symptoms, it was clearly not doing a lot of good.
Yeah, that's so scary.
The doctors and nurses stayed on site on the quarantine station site, although clearly in their own separate units and housing blocks and things like that. And their jobs left them at a high risk of infection and death themselves, and several people lost their lives after exposure to various diseases brought to the land while working at the Q station. Annie Egan was one of those people. She was a 27-year-old nurse who was really early on in her career, and she volunteered at the station to aid soldiers suffering from the flu. She arrived in November of 1918 and cared for the sick and dying, but a month later, she was dead. She was a devout Catholic. Her final wishes in her last days were to be seen by a priest so that she could be given her final rites. But her request was repeatedly denied. She spent 4 days, the last 4 days of her life, pleading with her higher-ups for religious comfort, but passed away on December 5th without receiving any. And because
Why'd they deny her?
Because they didn't want anybody from the outside coming in, no matter what the purpose was. And because her body was still highly infectious, she was buried by another nurse. Her family and friends were not allowed to be there and on the grounds at the quarantine station. And she was buried with full military honors. Days later, down in Sydney, a funeral and a church service were given in Annie's honor by her family and friends. And word spread about her final request for those final rites and the denial of that. And the community was horrified by it. They kind of got up in arms for her. And in response to the uproar, the Archbishop pleaded to the government to allow the dying in the quarantine station to be allowed spiritual counsel in their final moments if they requested it.
Yeah, that's awful. Your last moments and you're not even allowed to practice your faith or be comforted in that moment.
And it was a big battle, but ultimately that comfort was permitted. And from then on out at the station, if they were requested, priests were allowed on site to the bedside of the dying. And again, with the height of the COVID epidemic, I mean, a personal anecdote, my great aunt was dying during the time of COVID, and she was very, very close to my mom. And my great aunt never married. She was such a badass. She never married and she traveled the world. She had the same job her whole life and she spent her money. She saved her money to travel the world she was like the real cool aunt. Truly. Yeah, truly. And she traveled the world, and then any extra money that she had, she gifted to her nieces and nephews, me, and a lot of my cousins to go to school with and to further our education. And she was awesome. But anyways, she had cancer and she was admitted to the hospital in her final months because it got really, really bad and she couldn't care for herself. And nobody was allowed to be with her, and because of COVID restrictions, and she passed away by herself. So it just reminded me of that time. Like, my mom literally would go outside of her hospital window to see her because there were such high restrictions on who was allowed in and with patient people, you know.
At least she was able to like physically go there outside the window. And you know, like a lot of people are like way up in skyscrapers and hospitals and stuff, like way up on the floors. But it's so horrible, especially knowing now
what we know.
What we know. Like, COVID is no longer as scary as it was when it first came out. So that's not happening in hospitals anymore. So that's awful.
Yeah.
Fall is so cozy and full of some of my favorite smells. Apple pies baking in the oven with the smell of cinnamon filling the air, coffee in the mornings, the crisp air of fallen leaves. But what's not on that list is body odor. Summer might be over, but the best part of hiking season is in full swing, which means the weather is cooler, but we're still outside getting sweaty and, unfortunately, having body odor. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Lume whole body deodorants for pits, privates, and beyond. Lume deodorant was created by an OBGYN who discovered odor isn't just an underarm thing, it's an all-over thing. So she developed Lume, a pH-optimized deodorant that's clinically proven to control odor everywhere for up to 72 hours, so fall can be fresh. My personal favorites are their aluminum-free solid stick deodorants and their deodorant wipes. I always have their wipes on hand with me when I'm camping, or I know I'll be without a shower for a few days because they keep me feeling fresh. I love that with their starter pack, you can choose whatever scent you'd like for each of their products. My go-tos are fresh alpine, minted cucumber, and lavender sage. Lume Starter Pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. As a special offer for our listeners, new customers get 15% off all Lumi products with our exclusive code. And if you combine the 15% off with the already discounted starter pack, that equals over 40% off their starter pack. Use code NPAD for 15% off your first purchase at lumideodorant.com. That's code NPAD at LUMEDEODORANT.com. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you.
There are 572 people known to have died once on site at the quarantine station, and they are buried in one of 3 cemeteries in the park, and they range from anybody from an infant all the way to the elderly. However, no records exist for the death tolls in the first 9 years of the Q Station's operation, meaning that the people who passed away there and are interred there, that number likely exceeds 1,000 people. So
Wow,
there's
that's a
572
lot.
people who we know of. Smallpox, typhus, typhoid, scarlet fever, whooping cough, bubonic plague, and Spanish influenza were among the diseases responsible for their deaths. Despite so many burials, there are little visual remnants of the graves themselves. For example, in the second cemetery, we know that there are at least 100 people that are interred there. However, there's only one gravestone that you can visually see there today.
Only 1 out of 100 that they know of?
Yep. Just for various reasons, either people couldn't afford a headstone and there's just no marker there, or they were damaged and removed over time. There's a bunch of different reasons, but if you're to go there to the second cemetery, there's only one actual grave marker that you can visually see. I'm so glad you asked. His name is Isaac Lowes, and he was 6 years old when he passed away. He arrived in 1878 to the Q Station on a ship where scarlet fever was pretty rampant, and he died of that disease once he was in quarantine. And his best friend, Thomas, also died the same week that Thomas did. And although only Isaac's headstone remains due to historic photographs, we know that Thomas is buried right next to his best friend because he once had...
my heart.
I'm sorry.
I could cry. Like, really, I'm getting my period soon. I could cry.
I feel like you say that every week.
Give me like a few minutes. That's awful. That's so sad.
Yeah, so we know because of historical record that they are there side by side, but only Isaac's grave, and there's like a wrought iron metal fence kind of around his grave as well that his parents put up for him. There are also various monuments for the hundreds of people who died at sea on their way to the quarantine station that are near the cemeteries as well, because I mean, yeah, so many people died once they were there, but even more people died en route there. The station operated for 156 years and was host to over 13,000 people. But with improved medical technology and the popularity of air travel, it shut its doors in March of 1984 when ownership was handed over to the government for use as a national park. The park preserves the station on the west side of North Head, including the wharf, the showers, disinfection chambers, administrative buildings, dining halls, dorms, and hospitals. But the park also serves as a sanctuary because there are various groups that have worked really hard over the years to protect all of the land in the area due to its rich ecological value with native and endangered populations of flora and fauna. Interestingly, this isn't the only Australian national park that preserves a quarantine station. Point Nepean National Park in Melbourne holds the remnants of another quarantine station that was established right around the same time as North Head. But if you're in Sydney and would like to learn more about the North Head Quarantine Station, the park hosts several different group and private tours that cover a ton of ground. There is a disease and burial tour where guides will explain to groups the various strange and horrifying medical practices of the time that we kind of touched upon with the whole strychnine thing. And then there are also history tours that focus on the stories of the migrants coming through the station, many of which were just coming in hopes in search of a new and better life. There are tours tailored to children, which goes through the process of what It was kind of like to come to the station aboard a ship, like step by step. They lead them through that. And of course, there are ghost tours.
What we've all been waiting for.
And guess what they're called? Guess what they're called?
I don't know. You're going to have to tell me.
Quarantine After Dark.
Oh, that's cute.
It's like,
what a coincidence.
We should work together in some way. So like I said, it wouldn't be an October episode if there wasn't a paranormal angle to this whole thing. So here we go. On to the paranormal stuff.
Cool.
The entire quarantine station grounds are known for paranormal activity and have drawn amateur and professional ghost hunting groups from all around the world, as it has cemented itself as one of Australia's most haunted sites. Whispered voices, unexplained apparitions, and inexplicable icy cold patches of air can be and have been noted pretty much anywhere on site. It's not like you have to be in one place to sense something, but there are a few places where people have experienced more of those things than not. So to start, we're going to go to the grave digger's cottage.
Ooh, I mean, it already sounds spooky, so...
It's the oldest building on site, dating back to the 1840s, but the name is kind of misleading. I mean, it has a really catchy name, I'll give them that, but it's kind of up for debate what the original purpose of the building was, and they're not even sure if grave diggers actually, that was their housing unit. They think it was mostly used as like an officer's building or an administrative building.
That's very misleading.
But regardless... It's stuck, and I like it. And it's haunted. Yeah. So there are several entities that are thought to inhabit the cottage today. Guides have witnessed chairs being dragged across the floor, heard items be picked up and chucked across the room. The floor has vibrated underneath their feet, and most guides and visitors have sensed odd feelings, even fainting and becoming nauseous. There have also been apparitions seen, specifically a tall, thin man walking through the building from the front to the back. And when he makes his way towards the back, he ends up sitting in one of the armchairs that are back there before disappearing.
Creepy.
Additionally, there has been an apparition seen in the cottage's bathtub, crouched down and weeping, or the apparition of a man in a wide-brimmed hat and dark cloak hanging out in the kitchen. But in particular, there is an infamous spirit named Samuel that resides there. And sadly, he isn't the friendliest of spirits. One night, while giving a tour of the cottage, a guide named Brandon was speaking to his group. They were kind of standing in the kitchen area and just kind of hanging out while he told them the history of the building. A woman and her young daughter had wandered into a nearby bedroom because the cottage isn't big. It's a small building. So while they were probably at the outskirts of the group, and they kind of wandered into the adjacent bedroom known as Sam's bedroom. Suddenly, they both began screaming, and Brandon rushed past his group into the room to see what the hell was going on. And he entered to see the woman, the older woman, being thrashed around by an invisible force. And even more terrifying, she started speaking in a man's voice.
Oh, no.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. That is the worst haunting.
So Brandon... is trying to help her. So he grabs her and tries to pull her out of the room. But there is an invisible force. Literally, he could see the back of her jacket being pulled back. Like she was being held back into that room.
I hate that.
I'm so sorry.
So much.
I'm so sorry. I know this one's actually really... Imagine... I just have to say, I'm watching myself on video. I've touched my face like 500 times already.
3,000 is the number.
3,000 is my number.
Yeah.
Okay, anyways. So I'm going to put my hands down here and not use them again. But
keep your hands to yourself.
They are to myself, but they're still on my face.
Remember that in like elementary school where they're like, keep your hands to yourself if you're like fidgeting and stuff. And then you had to like put them on the desk.
Fold them in front of you and just...
just like sit there like very... calm and not move.
Yeah. Back to this woman. Brandon helps her, and she's finally removed from not only the bedroom, but the entire cottage. And she gets out, calmed down, and that was it. And then she left.
She's not talking in a man's voice anymore.
No, I guess she was fine afterwards.
I guess she got the full tour experience.
She sure did. She signed up for a paranormal tour and she got one.
Yeah.
And they say about Samuel or Sam that he sometimes gets very upset with women in particular, and that he's easily agitated. So they're not sure if she said something that irritated his spirit or he just picked on her. But either way, that's a really jarring account from that cottage.
Do we know his history, like who he was in life?
No. There's rumors that he was one of the site's grave diggers, but I mean, who knows? So next, let's go to the hospital ward. Again, unexplained apparitions, shadows, and strange sensations have been felt and experienced here, but there is one spirit in particular that is known to patrol the building. It's been known for years amongst the guides that when they start speaking of a particular nurse, one of the nurses that had passed away while working on site, they'd sense somebody come up and stand behind them during that portion of the tour. So the person who was talking about this and explaining that, he was like, yeah, I was a new guide. And when I was being prepped, because as part of your training, you have to shadow other tours and other guides giving their talks and things like that. And he said it was just known amongst guides that during this time, don't be surprised if you sense something weird come up and stand behind you.
Interesting.
And not only that, on several occasions, visitors who don't know this, they don't know that whole thing amongst guides, they've noticed an apparition of a woman in a nursing uniform tagging along with groups, either like trailing behind the guide or standing at the edge of the group while they were in the hospital. Even more particular, this entity who arrives and hangs out for this part of the tour often gravitates to visitors who currently serve or who have served in the armed forces.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that crazy? And it's like they put that together after from just talking to people who have experienced this. A large portion of them are veterans or have a military background, and they're not showing up in their uniforms.
She just knows. Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting.
And it's speculated that this is Annie Egan, the young nurse who passed away that was volunteering with the military and taking care of soldiers.
And then died a month later.
Yeah. Or maybe Elizabeth McGregor, who I didn't talk about in particular, but she was another young nurse who cared for soldiers and died after contracting the flu from them. And she's buried on site as well. So I think that's amongst one of the better hauntings here. Because I think that, just showing up and tagging along and maybe making sure that people are okay seems nice.
She sounds caring and nice.
Thoughtful.
Yeah.
Well, this is the one you're going to hate the most, I think.
I thought the other one was bad. So, all right.
I don't know. We'll see. You tell me.
Right on me.
Okay. So we're going to the morgue now. Next stop.
Of course we are.
Yeah. As one does.
Of course things have gone down in the morgue. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Do you ever feel like the face you're putting on for everyone else to see is really just a mask that you're hiding behind? October is the season for wearing masks and costumes, but some of us feel like we wear a mask because of what's going on inside of us feels too difficult to share or won't be accepted to friends, family, coworkers, or anyone. Therapy can help you learn to accept all parts of yourself so you feel comfortable and can take that mask off. Masks are great for Halloween, but not for hiding our emotions and how we're doing on the inside. Therapy can give you an outlet to speak to someone about how you're really feeling, deal with those emotions, and learn how to confide in the people you care about when you need to. If you're looking to start therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Take off the mask with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/NPAD to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/NPAD.
Normally, people experience feelings of uneasiness and don't last long once inside this building on tours. This is one of the spots where most people kind of tap out the earliest and just wait outside until the group moves along.
Wow, it's that strong that people don't even want to be down there.
Yep. And on one occasion, this is kind of recent, this is 2019, a guide who had been working at the station for years was conducting one of the paranormal tours and was bringing the group through the morgue. And it's interesting because in the past, this guide, whose name is Mel, she was super comfortable in the morgue. She was like, yeah, it was kind of creepy just because I knew its purpose, and it's still adorned the way that a morgue would typically look, and it's kind of freaky, but she never felt uneasiness, or she didn't feel anything that a lot of the visitors would feel. She was like, I've been there at night by myself, like doing our rounds, and I was never like, I can't go there, you know?
Yeah.
She never really felt any sort of hesitation. Long story short. But on this night, Mel and her group were gathered around the original concrete autopsy slab in the middle of the room that the park, they have a mannequin on it that's like draped in a white sheet. Just so you can envision.
I can envision what a morgue would look like, but thank you.
Yeah, they just really want you to know. The lights were dimmed, and the guide was so Mel was holding the bottom of the feet of this mannequin while she was talking as everyone was circled around her. And she felt something brush down the side of her arm. And she glanced next to her thinking that somebody brushed into her or touched her. And she shone the light of her flashlight over to where she was touched. But nobody in her group was near her. They were at least several feet away on either side. But whatever, she didn't really think much of it. Continued her speech. Several minutes go by, and then suddenly her hand that was still resting on the bottom of this mannequin's feet was forcibly smacked off. And so this time she's a little more concerned because this is, I mean, when you feel the brush of something against you, it could be anything. You know, you're just like, what was that weird? But this is like unmistakable. Something smacked her hand off of the thing. So she's thoroughly freaked out, but she doesn't want to freak out her tour. So, and it's dark. Remember, it's like dimly lit. It's dark. People have flashlights. She didn't think that anyone even noticed her hand like get smacked away. So she keeps going, and suddenly she feels hands between her shoulder blades on her back, and she was shoved forward. Like, it's increasing in aggression here. And this time she whipped her light around everyone near her and said, okay, who is touching me? Has anyone touched me? And everyone just shook their heads. No.
Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, what are you saying? So a professional, as always, I mean, I don't know if I could have this level of professionalism. She continued her tour. She's like, okay, weird. And she keeps going. And then suddenly she feels this, like, she described it kind of like the feeling of like a snake wrapping around her, this icy cold, like, breeze, but it was not just blowing past her. It started behind her, wrapped around her side, one of her sides, and went off towards the person standing directly beside her. Like, it slithered around her, and she followed this sensation kind of with her eyes as it goes over towards her side, and she watches as the woman to her left suddenly looks terrified because she's starting to feel it now, and the EMF reader that this woman is holding starts lighting up like a Christmas tree, and it was stagnant before. No. So scared but intrigued, Mel asks out loud, if there's anyone here with us, can you give us a sign?
No, they've already given a sign, girl. They've already given the sign.
I would argue. Yeah.
And they're not friendly ones.
As a response to this, she shoved forward again. And this time, because everyone is paying attention to what's happening, they all just ran out of the building.
Fair.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, let's get out of here.
That'd be me.
I just envision, the cartoons where people are so afraid they start running and their feet are just like a blur.
Yeah.
Like, get out of it. Or actually, more accurately, the scene in Casper. Are you familiar with Casper, like, enough to know?
Yeah, I haven't seen it in a very long time.
Oh, you should add it. I think it might be my favorite Halloween movie. I think it might be. Yeah. I just love it. That Hocus Pocus is a close second, but I really think Casper's my first. But anyways, when they're having the party at the house, like with all the kids, it's a costume party. And then the girl is dancing with Casper. And everyone realizes that he's a ghost. He turns back from a boy to a ghost.
Yes. Oh,
and then
this is like bringing flashbacks.
The music stops, their jaws drop, and they all just like hightail it, running over each other out of the building. That's what
this tour was like.
That's what I imagine. Anyway, so back to Mel. She has to go back the next night.
Oh, it's not over.
For another tour.
I know it's not over because you said I'm going to hate this one the most.
Yeah. So she has to go back for another tour. The show must go on. And she's in the same place at the same point in time of her speech. And while nothing happened to her, she was in the same place, same time. And a woman next to her starts complaining of an icy cold feeling and sensing that someone was poking her in the back of her, between her shoulder blades, like kind of like shoving her forward. So it kind of was like, she said that she felt like it was back and making its presence known to me. Like, yes, this woman felt something, but she, whatever was doing this, knew that she would recognize this is the same pattern and the same thing. And this is after like a long period of time for her not having any experiences here in the morgue personally.
Yeah, because she was very comfortable here.
Yeah, exactly. And in another instance in the morgue, this is a different guide now, and this one's the weirdest, but she goes into the building to do just like a security check. She wasn't with a tour or guiding anything, but she went through the building and she was doing her rounds. And as she took out her phone to check the time, her notes app came up and it was writing hi, 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 hi repeatedly as it was just like being held in her hand.
That is so weird. And feels more friendly though. Like, hi.
No, hi. You're telling me if that happened to you, you would be like, oh, this is cute.
It would still scare me, but it would scare me less than being like shoved.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
You're not physically assaulting me. You're just writing on my phone.
You're just wanting me
to
know
just writing
you're here.
Hi. If it said hi, you're going to die, I would be way more afraid.
It's like red rum. Yeah. Okay. Lastly, onto the shower block. Despite not having any documented deaths in this building, the activity is pretty high here. There are shadowy figures that have been seen wandering throughout this building, popping their heads in and out of the shower cubicles, almost as if trying to like sneak a look at visitors. Or there are apparitions noted running through the hallway that separate the different cubicles of the showers. There have been voices of children seemingly in desperation, crying out, perhaps not wanting to be forced into the chemical showers. There have been people who experienced either very cold or very hot patches of air while in here, and guides and visitors have felt the sensation of being frozen in place, kind of like sleep paralysis while you're awake.
Oh,
so you're not able to move. Like,
but you know what's going on.
You know, you're very aware.
Fully conscious.
You're fully conscious. You're very aware, but you can't move your legs and you can't speak and call for help, which is terrifying. People have been physically shoved or spun around in place, like physically turned around while here, or they just feel extreme levels of discomfort. During one paranormal investigation of the building, a ghost hunting team was using an ovulus or a ghost box. And this is my favorite part of all the paranormal stories. Okay, so for those people who are not familiar with this type of device, it contains a database, kind of just like words and syllables that supposedly allow entities to communicate in real time to the user, versus people who go around with a recorder in hopes of catching an EVP. That's footage that you have to typically re-listen to at a later date. You'll say questions or ask prompts. You'll wait, pause for a couple moments, and then ask something else. And then later on, you hook it up and re-listen to it and listen for voices. Whereas the Ovilus, it'll say something out loud in real time. So during this session, the device said the words enough and leave, kind of like often, but also Cameron, mom, and stomach. And one of the investigators that were on the team had a son named Cameron. And the very next day, she received a call from her husband saying that Cameron had been rushed to the hospital with appendicitis.
That is freaky.
Right?
That is so freaky.
That is like like it's not saying like hospital, sick, army, soldier, like things that have to do with that particular site, which
Like,
would
it
still
said
be
his
really
son's
interesting.
name. Yeah. And I think what makes it extra freaky is when you hear of a voice or an apparition saying something from the past that they would have said in their real life. It's like, that makes sense. This is when they lived.
Yes.
But knowing that they know something about your current life of someone who's not even there.
Right. I know.
It's freaky. It's freaky.
The Q station doesn't just offer paranormal tours. They level up. Okay. They level up their paranormal tours because they offer sleepover paranormal tours.
Shut up. No.
When are we going?
I am not going to Australia with you. For sure.
But why? So during these tours, guests stay the night and ghost hunt the entire time. And on one of these occasions, the group had settled in for the night and were asleep. The guide was awoken in the early morning hours by 3 loud knocks directly above her head. And when she opened her eyes, there was a human-shaped shadow figure wearing a hood standing at the foot of her bed.
Of course there was.
She managed
for sleeping overnight there.
She managed to whisper, "Go away," 3 times, and it eventually did disappear. And she was able to see the rest of the room behind where this figure was before it disappeared. And she kind of described it like it pixelated away and disappeared. And then she could see the fireplace on the other side of where it was standing. So those are just a few of the many accounts that pour in every single year from the North Head Quarantine Station. So whether you're interested in going for the history or the haunts, this Australian National Park has it all. And that's it. That's the end.
Love it. Wow. That was so interesting. Oh my God. No, the sleepover thing. I will do haunted tours with you. Sleeping over though?
I mean, how much?
I mean, we've slept in haunted places before, but like to actively search for it at night?
Well, I think it's a little different because yes, I've sought out paranormal places that have been known for their paranormal activity and we've stayed there. But this is like, not only are you doing that, you're adding the layer of you are actively engaging, trying to engage, and you're trying to forge this type of connection, and you're rising. Your vibes are like, I'm here for you to do something to me, and I'm trying to make that happen. And so it's a little different. You're instigating. You're
instigating.
Yeah, you're definitely instigating. But lucky for you, I don't have it in me to travel across the world again right now. So you're safe.
Great. For now. Well, I'm happy that you did this episode in Australia because I know that we have a lot of Australian listeners who are going to be really excited to hear this. But also it was really interesting with a lot of history and hauntings. And I think it's the perfect one to have come out right before Halloween.
Yeah. So, Halloween's this week.
Yeah.
Do you have a costume?
I don't even have plans.
Same.
To be
Isn't
honest.
that so sad? Well, it just like, it's hard because we're so busy. The end of October has been really busy for us work-wise because of a few things happening in November that we're trying to get ahead of. And it's just kind of like, it's the best time of the year. And like, there's so many opportunities, especially with Halloween. And like, there was a few things I wanted to do that I just like was not able to. Included in that is preparing anything for Halloween.
Yeah. Do you remember college when Halloween was like a full week event where you had a costume? I remember if Halloween was on Monday, then starting Thursday night, I would have a costume Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and of course Monday because Monday was Halloween.
Yes.
But it was the weekend before that and Thirsty Thursday. And it's just like how the times have changed.
Costumes that I had. My Facebook albums are private for a reason. I will just say that. And there are I just off the top of my head, I remember being like doing the toga thing, like the Greek toga.
Oh yeah,
obviously.
Classic.
One would. Did you go to college if you didn't dress up like that at one point? And then cowboy. cowgirl.
Everyone was a cowgirl.
Cowgirl. And not like a cool one with chaps and like no. This was like how little clothing can I wear? While still conveying I am a cowgirl in New Hampshire.
Was a cowgirl. I remember on Halloween when we had that huge snowstorm.
The snowstorm of 2008. Was it?
No, this was college. This was in college.
Oh, no, I mean, sorry. 2012.
Yeah, maybe it was 2012.
Because it was the year before I graduated. I remember it being terrible.
I remember I wore like the smallest shorts I had. I like tied up a shirt really small. I had a cowboy hat on and cowboy boots. And because I thought I looked cute, I didn't want to wear a jacket to cover it up.
Obviously.
Plus, if you're going to a house party, where are you going to put your jacket?
You're not going to hold it.
No, that's crazy. So I just walked around my college town to parties in a blizzard where we got like 3.5, 4 feet of like something ridiculous. We got so much snow. It was so cold. And I was just walking around like that.
I had the similar experience. We were probably doing the same thing in Keene and Plymouth at the same time. Parallel lives. So the cowgirl. What else? I was a cat.
Of course.
What kind of cat? I am not sure.
A black one.
But I had like leopard leggings.
Oh, okay.
So maybe I was
a black
leopard.
cat at one point.
Okay. Where did you do toga too?
I didn't do toga.
Oh God, I thought we were on it.
I did pirate. I was pirate one year.
I was also a pirate. Cassie.
Look at that.
Okay, wait. This is where I think we're gonna
again.
Yeah, I think so. I also had. this might be where we diverge a little bit, but I was a lion tamer. So I had I had like a safari hat. I had this long green vest that was not quite a shirt, but not quite a dress, but I wore it as I had no pants on, obviously.
So it's a dress. Obviously.
And then I carried around I didn't want to carry around a jacket because why would you do that? But
That's
I carried
ridiculous.
around a lion stuffed animal that was literally this big.
Okay, that's pretty good.
And then I had like a whip, and then I put 3 little red paint marks here as if I was scratched by the lion.
I'm sure it looked very realistic.
It did. It sure did.
I have one outfit. I just found it on Facebook because mine is also private, so don't try to find it because it's private for a reason. I have no idea what I am in this.
Can you describe it?
I am wearing, yes.
Also, I think we might, if I'm feeling silly, we can post these.
Okay.
But maybe not because I haven't looked at them in a really long time. And I know for a fact I edited I've never been like a Facetune person. Like I've never gotten
that's past
the
our
skill.
generation, I think.
I think it is.
Tune.
But I definitely fucked with the
like the saturation.
The color. Yes.
And, yeah.
So I looked like an Oompa Loompa.
And you put like little stickers on them and stuff. So my outfit that I found, I have no idea what I think I'm those. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, do you remember those candies that come on paper that they're
dots.
the little circle dots? I think I'm dots candy.
Wait, can you send this to me? Like just send this to me really quickly. Because I want to see
if you put this on Instagram, I swear to God.
I will ask for your permission for your outfits. Okay, let's see. It's coming.
There's so many things going on from my hair to my outfit to also I'm pretty sure I'm wearing a bathing suit top for a bra.
Well, you were trying to hide because it's the cut of the it's the cut of the top.
But you can see the bathing suit, so it doesn't really hide anything.
That is true. But there is so much to say about this because number one, you're doing the classic millennial
hand on your hip.
Hand on your hip. Just one. There's a Bob Marley poster in the background.
There is. And that's my bedroom.
Yep, your dorm room. Your bangs are straightened and side swept, but you also have a curl, but also just the top layer of
I also have a poof.
But I do think you were supposed to be dots because I see. Were they raised? Do you remember if they were raised or they're just like polka dot pattern?
I think that they're just polka dot pattern.
But they're the
for
colors
whatever reason, I'm like a slutty
candy.
candy dots because I also have, here's a picture here. I have pink stockings, like the
Oh yeah,
yeah,
because that no outfit
and
is
it's
complete
super
without.
short.
Are you playing Root in that picture? That
Sure am.
you just showed me beer pong, as other people say.
Beer pong, Beirut, yeah.
I always called it Root. I don't know.
I did too.
Yeah. God, there are just so many. I'm just trying to think of anything else that I did because, like you said, there was several
Here I'm a
outfits per weekend.
dominatrix angel.
This is so fun. Oh my God. This is so fun. I love how I was the devil.
Ooh.
Yeah, I was the devil. Just a straight up devil, not any sort of I didn't do a crossover. Like you had like
1 year
just an angel costume with just a leather strap that indicated the
just
dominatrix.
went across the whole thing.
Yeah.
Another one that we did is me and my friends all dressed up as Playboy bunnies, and then one of my friends dressed up as Hugh Hefner.
Okay,
but we didn't have
cute.
actual comments, or costumes. So he just like wore his bathrobe, and we just wore like whatever black thing we could find.
I mean, you got to do what you got to do because I was also a Playboy bunny.
Look at that.
With the ears and the little cufflinks and everything. Mm-hmm. And then also, I'm trying to remember where this album is, but my senior year, me and my roommates we were calendar girls. Oh, here they are. We were the calendar. So I was Valentine's Day. So I was a risque, can I just say the bandana, or not the bandana, the thing around your head. The little like headband around your head.
Yep.
Okay, so I was that, and I had my roommates put lipstick on and kiss me all over, so I had kiss marks everywhere. And then one of my roommates was Cinco de Mayo. And then
that's fun.
And then one was Mardi Gras, and one was St. Patrick's Day.
That's a fun idea.
Isn't that
for
cute?
Outfits. Yeah.
But it only worked if we were like together, you know?
Yeah.
And it was hard
if you were just alone, it was hard to...
It's hard to stick together. Oh, here's the Playboy, but wow. This was also senior year. So like, again, with
my album that I just showed you of all of mine was labeled Halloween 2010. All of those outfits were all 2010.
Oh, here I go with here I am.
There you are. You're a cat.
I'm a cat. Duh. Okay, so not only did I have leopard leggings, I had this is clearly a leopard lingerie top that I'm just wearing out and about.
Out in public.
What the hell is wrong? Oh my God. I don't know. I feel like the people are going to want this after we've been talking about it for
yeah, we were thriving.
35 minutes.
Basically.
Oh, here's the cowboy. Oh my God, you're going to die. I know this was the cowboy because it's in the album, but if I just saw this, I would be like, are you even dressed up as anything other than ugly? Look how saturated that picture is, first of all.
Oh my God, yeah. The editing on it.
And then I have a Edward Cullen and Marilyn Monroe poster above my bed.
I love that. Also, our cowboy outfits are the exact same, except I have a pink flannel on.
And mine's blue.
Yeah.
Same, but different. Always.
Yeah. Were you ever a military girl for Halloween?
I was not.
I was that once.
Like an army camo.
Yeah.
Wow.
I did that once.
God, the embarrassment. I have secondhand embarrassment for myself.
I am good for you, girl, that you had the confidence to get out like that.
And I can't even believe I wore heels.
Yeah, heels were another...
Like actual, like really tall, bedazzled. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Let's stop talking about this because we've been talking about it for a really long time.
Yeah. Anyway, maybe for Halloween, we'll post some of our old Halloween costumes.
What have we done? It's something to look forward to on Halloween. If we,
unless we bag out, if you don't see it, don't ask questions. It's just we decided this was a really bad idea.
It's just so funny, the evolution, because I'm like, God, like, I don't know what I'm going to be this year. And then circling back to like really to tie this into a bow, the plan, nothing. I mean, I went to Spirit of Halloween to get a couple of like cobweb things to decorate the house with. But that's pretty much the extent, of the spirit that I have been able to put into this year. And I was looking at the costumes and I'm like, where am I? I'm not even going anywhere. So what is the point? Would I? What is the point? But it's so funny because I was going to go visit somebody and I'm like, I don't have anything. Like if we were to go to a park, like I don't have any plants, I have nothing with me. I have the remnants of a Beetlejuice costume, but it's not complete. And then you have to do like your hair and your makeup and it's like a whole thing. And they were like
dressing up for Halloween.
They were like, I have a shark onesie. I'm like, perfect. Then you can't see any of me. I'm basically in pajamas,
And like how you've evolved from wearing nothing to wanting to wear a shark costume.
A shark, like that you can just see like my eyeballs.
They're like those pajamas that are going viral online where you just like it has like all the girls like laying on their couch just in a shark onesie. Yeah. Like one of those.
Exactly. It's like, wow, how I've devolved, if anything, but I think that's progress,
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for listening to that, whatever that was. And we will see you next week. We hope you enjoy your Halloween and have a great holiday.
Yes. And in the meantime, enjoy the view.
But watch your back.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you so much for joining us again this week. If you have a trail tale or story suggestion, send us an email at stories@npadpodcast.com. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at National Park After Dark and on Twitter at NPAD Podcast. Join our Outsiders Only community on Patreon or Apple subscriptions to listen ad-free, unlock monthly bonus episodes, and exclusive content.
And remember, when you support our sponsors, you are supporting our show. For our exclusive discount codes and source information from today's episode, check out the show notes. For more information on our show, our book recommendations, merch updates, and more, visit our website at npadpodcast.com. And please rate, review, and subscribe from wherever you listen to podcasts.